Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rachel from Extreme. Happy to be speaking with you again, and you are in store for a powerhouse interview. This is something that is going to be one of the hallmarks for Extreme to get to tell the story. And so without any further ado, let me introduce to you the pioneer of live streaming himself, Phil Nelson from Nelco Media.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I'm stoked, grinning ear to ear to have you here.
Aim way higher. No, just kidding.
So you're such a captivating individual, and we had the opportunity. We met pre-COVID, right?
Yes.
Pre-COVID, and we kind of happened to be somewhat in similar industries, and so once I discovered you and I realized what you were doing and how few people. I mean, yes, people the powerhouse people in the industry definitely know what you do,
right.
But for the people in our local San Antonio, the sixth largest city, Texas, the U.S., there's still a tremendous amount of people who don't understand what sort of mega mind they're getting to watch right now. So by all means, tell people, who you are and what you do. And
well, I've been in live television for over 30 years. I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. So I was raised as an entrepreneur. My dad always invented things, built businesses, and would patent ideas and sell the business. And, so I was raised as a person that really didn't see an obstacle to going and doing something. And so when I was 15, my brother and I went to my dad on a Sunday morning and said, we need to borrow $5,000. We want to start a comic book and baseball card store in the mall. And my dad was crazy enough to say yes. He loaned us the $5,000. We went to the mall manager, met with him, and at that time in North Louisiana, if you had mall rent or mall space, you had to be open when the mall was open. But we pitched him, look, we're high school kids. I was in the 9th grade. My brother was in the 8th grade, and said we can't be here when we're in school. So we want to work out a deal where we have a store in the mall. It's baseball cards and comics. Our customers are in school too. So, we negotiated this deal and it became a pretty big deal. I mean, NBC World News Tonight did a story on us, front page of the paper. And, as a little kid, we were making about $1,000 a day.
A day?
A day.
And you were 15?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
I don't want to tell anybody, we don't, that might be an unlisted number, your birthday or your age, but I mean, that's
yeah, it was back in the 80s.
Amount of money
We got in at the right time. With any business, you really... timing is everything. And we were in the time, when we started the baseball, it was called Cardco. Okay. We like company. My company's Nelco. There's a theme there. But we started Cardco in the mid to late 80s. Mm-hmm. And at the time, there was a baseball card price guide, but there wasn't a basketball card price guide. It really wasn't an industry yet. As there were people collecting, but it wasn't like a super moneymaker industry. And then all of a sudden in the 80s, it just exploded. Michael Jordan, 1986 Fleer rookie, was rare. And so anyway, we started this baseball card store and did really, really well with it and made a lot of money. And, as an 18-year-old kid, I was driving around in a Corvette I paid cash for and had money in the bank. And my brother was driving a jacked-up Toyota pickup with the big KC lights on it. You could tell we're very different. I was the Corvette. He was the off-road vehicle. But, it was really amazing. But I learned to kind of be fearless. And if you have a good idea, you go after it. So, I did that, and then I sold that company, believe it or not, when I was a junior in high school, and then pocketed the profits, my brother and I did, and then I loved video. I was a video nerd. If you've ever seen the Goldbergs, I was that little kid running around with the camera videotaping, people at the beach and every family event and annoying everyone. And so, once again, my dad had a company that was building machinery for the pulp and paper industry, invented this technology to reduce wastewater in a paper mill. Mm-hmm. And big deal. And I was like, Dad, you need a video. And he's like, oh, okay. So we hired a video production company to come out, and they weren't, the videographer didn't really listen that well, to what was important to us. He was zooming in on a bolt that meant nothing, And so I was like, okay, Dad, I'm going to go buy a video camera and you're going to hire me and I'm going to make your videos. And so I got into video that way. I went and bought a I spent like 17 grand on a camera, at 18 and started doing videos for my dad. And what was really cool is at that time, marketing was changing. Before that, it was printed brochures and slideshows. Mm-hmm. And this was in the late 80s, and video was just really taken off because, video editing and things like that were becoming more and more accessible. You didn't have to have $1 million to make videos. And so I bought this camera, started shooting his videos. We edited his video, and he takes it out on his first sales call and basically says, look, you're not going to come to Monroe, Louisiana to see my facility, so I'm going to bring it to you. And he closed $1 million deal with that one video.
Isn't that amazing?
So I decided, you know what? I'm going to start a video production company. And I did. It was called VIP Productions. And I was at an 800 square foot office in Monroe, Louisiana that I was paying $800 a month for. And I started doing videos, and I built a big production company that we transitioned the name to VAR Studios, which was Video Audio Recording Studios. Mm-hmm. And we produced, a lot of, we did the first high school football television show in the United States on primetime television on a major network. So so I started doing video, and then once again I sold that company when I was 25 or 24, and the company that I used the technology from a company called NewTek, mm-hmm. which was based in Topeka, Kansas, but moved here to San Antonio. And I was a big fan of this product called the Video Toaster. So all you video nerds out there, you'll know what the Video Toaster is. And I was a fan. They empowered me to do what I did. So when I sold my company and signed the non-compete agreement, I called NewTek and said, you guys need to hire me. And they're like, we're not hiring. I was like, and I called them every week. I would call HR at NewTek every week. Hey, you hiring this week? Hey, you hiring this week? Hey, you hiring this week? Because I was just playing music in bars and non-compete. I was honoring it and not doing videos. And so, I ran into the mic. That's a rookie mistake. But yeah, so I basically bugged them until the HR lady's like, look, I'm tired of you calling me. I'm just going to get you an interview with the VP of sales. And that way you'll at least go away or get hired. And we did a call, and he was like, can you start now? One, he liked that I wouldn't give up. And I started at NewTek in 1998, and I was at NewTek for 20 years. So, but it all goes back to my dad teaching me the entrepreneurial ideas of, be fearless, listen, but don't listen to people who don't know what they're talking about, because mm-hmm. there's a lot of people that will give you advice. Mm-hmm. But some of the advice is bad. Just because somebody is older doesn't necessarily mean they know what they're talking about. Right. Sorry, I ramble.
No.
I will go on a 30-minute show.
You came full circle, and you took one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was that. What do you think laid the foundations for the principles you use to run a successful enterprise now? And that's being fearless.
It really is. My dad taught me. My dad's an MBA and a mechanical engineer, so he can design it and market it. And it's funny, he doesn't hear no when it comes to business. Years later, after I took a hiatus from NewTek, I was at NewTek for 20 years, but he started a toy company. He came with this idea for a toy, and he made it, just did it, and went to Walmart and said, you need to sell this toy. And they're like, you need to go through our buyers. And I need a meeting with the buyer today. And they're like, no, we're not giving you a meeting with the buyer today. And so he was like, okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to put this toy on your desk. And when your boss walks out, if he doesn't ask you about it, I'm going to go home. But if he asks you about it, I'm at this hotel, and I will be right back for meeting with him. So the buyer comes out and goes, what's that? And she's like, great, this guy dropped it off. He wants to meet with you. So Dad comes back, and we got this toy into Walmart. And it was crazy, but I learned those, I'm not quite as bold as he is, but you haven't met my dad. He is very, very bold. Yes, we'll bring Phil Nelson on to talk about.
Oh, you're the junior.
I'm a junior, and my son's the third, so it's kind of cool. We have a little family tradition going on, but yeah, that was the foundation. Is as a human, you learn a lot from your surroundings.
Sure.
If your parents are scared to leave the house, odds are you're going to be scared to leave the house. If your parents are unstoppable forces, mm-hmm. odds are you're going to be an unstoppable force. And so, it's pretty cool that I had that opportunity, because I really I fear very little, jellyfish, no, I'm kidding. I'm not afraid of jellyfish either.
Okay. So new tech for 20 years.
Yeah.
And then those 20 years, passed by, have elapsed, and then you started Nelco.
Yeah, so I spent 20 years at New Tech, working on some amazing projects. I started off in inside sales, and they gave me the crappiest region in the United States.
Which was?
Central. When you
basket.
think about video, it's New York and LA, right?
Oklahoma's really inspired.
Yeah. Saskatoon, Canada is not a hotbed of television production, but they gave me the central region, and, I just look at problems and find a way to sell stuff, and so I turned the central region of the U.S. into the number one region in the United States for New Tech. And so then, we doubled the East and West Coast in the central. It was unbelievable. One of those reasons is Jimmy Neutron. There was a company in Dallas. I worked with them, and they made Jimmy Neutron in Dallas, Texas, and I dealt with all their technology and all that. Lightwave 3D, which is New Tech's 3D software package, which now is owned by another group. They're just relaunching it, so I got to give them a shout out. Andy Bishop, you're a hero. But we did Jimmy Neutron, and we got into game development, and we got into all these industries that the central region had. So at New Tech, after that happened, they're like, hey, why don't we give you the East Coast? So I built up the East Coast to double the central region, and it stayed, so New Tech sales were going way up. Then they're like, hey, why don't you become director of sales for the U.S.? So I did that, and I just progressed until I ended up as chief relationship officer. So I was a C-level exec there, and was a key player in creating a product called the TriCaster, which is a TV truck in a box. It was nominated for a technical Emmy, and the 4 people named on the Emmy were Tim Jennison, the father of desktop video, who invented video on the computer, Jim Plant, our CEO, Andrew Cross, our CTO, and me, the slacker of the bunch. But yeah, so TriCaster changed the world, worked with a lot of big brands and projects. I am, by many considered to be one of the pioneers of live streaming, because, working with the MTV Video Music Awards, we did the first after show. You know how every TV show now has a webcast talking to the cast? Jeff Jacobs and I put that together for MTV on The Hills. So we did the Hills after show party, had hundreds of thousands of kids tuning in to watch Spencer and Heidi tell why they're breaking up, Then we did the first high-definition live webcast in the world for a actual event was with the NBA, working with Steve Helmuth. He was the mastermind at the NBA, and New Lion, Chris Wagner. So NBA, New Lion was a streaming provider that we worked with, and then New Tech, which I was with, did the TriCaster. So the TriCaster did the production, New Lion did the distribution, and NBA was kind of the mastermind of all this. So, I've been doing this for a long time, and, after 20 years at New Tech, I always thought that it was important to look at a problem from a 360 approach, because a lot of people here's a box, buy this box and it'll solve all your problems. But really the box doesn't solve your problems, it's the workflow and how you use it.
Sure.
It's kind of like in medicine, you want that holistic approach to medicine. It's not just you ran into a forklift like I did. I ran into a forklift. I jumped into a forklift, whatever the metal thing is that sticks out of a forklift. But, instead of, just saying, here's a Band-Aid, it's like, why did you run into the forklift is the real question. But,
divine
knock some sense into my head. But, I wanted to approach the live broadcasting process from a 360 view. It's more about workflow than the widgets.
Sure.
And so very few people were doing that. And when I started Nelco Media, I left New Tech after 20 years and started Nelco Media in 2017. And, when we go into a facility, the switcher is important, but what's on camera is more important. So we got into set design, lighting design, workflow, streaming, the technology, sound, the acoustic treatment of a room. all of these things, it's the 360 approach, and that's really what Nelco Media focuses on, and that's our specialty. And we build a lot of TV studios and things like that, so it's pretty cool.
And we're going to talk about some of the large and some of the smaller scale projects that you've done. So, what is it that you think, from your dad to you being a salesperson yourself, right? And your brother, what do you think were the kind of traits that you carried through that have turned from that you sprungboard into new tech now that you are lily padding into Nelco?
I think the most important thing that I've learned in all this is be genuine and listen to your clients and decipher what they really, because they may say, I need this, but after you talk to them and learn about them, you find out what they really need. And I think that's one of the key areas is understanding what they need and where they need to go, more than just, I need a camera. Okay, well, what are you going to do? Instead of saying, okay, I will sell you that camera, it's, well, what kind of video are you going to be shooting? How are you going to use it? What are you going to do here? What is this for? How will you do this, that, and the other? And you may, many times with our clients, they don't end up buying what they ask for. We have the discussion and we really dial in what they need to do, because right tool for the right job is mission critical. And so, from my experience with my dad, my brother, and all the people I've worked with, that's really it, is build a relationship with the people you're working with, and truly understand what their need is, and then help them, meet that need.
I feel like that's a very defining quality in companies for hire, right? You find companies that they have a couple service offerings, a couple products, and that's what you're going to get, And I feel like that's that level of unqualified versus qualified when you've been in your domain long enough that you can go in and say and customize something that's one, starts with the client's need, but two, that's what you're paying me for, right? Is that level of expertise?
Yeah.
Is that set of eyeballs
that
I've had for 30 years? So I think that's nice to know that you guys kind of are concierge, and large scale concierge, because some of these projects are 6 and 7 figure projects that you guys are doing.
Yeah, Nelco Media, we consider ourselves a boutique integrator reseller, and what that means is we will sell you the equipment, but we will design your workflow, we'll design your studio, and we will build your studio, and then train you on your studio and support you on your studio. So the boutique is, if you think of a boutique hotel, it's all about service. It's not about the bed in the hotel, which you got to have a good bed, but it's what separates them, what sells the sizzle, not the steak, is that service of a boutique. And that's our concept. It's a boutique reseller integrator. And so our clients are pretty diversified. I mean, we helped Joe Rogan with his podcast studio in Austin with all their equipment there. We work with Tom Green, the comedian, Chris Angel, the magician, a lot of celebrity stuff. But we just did the BattleBots Arena in Las Vegas, which if you have Discovery Channel, check out the BattleBots, and you'll see some of our work on the next season. But then we also work with churches. We work with company marketing departments, the Texas Municipal, what is it? The Texas Municipal League. Yes, it's the Intergovernmental Risk Pool. So we also work with a lot of municipal governments. Our concept is video needs to look more like television than bad dorm room video on YouTube. And I know some people disagree with me because when you're dealing with social and TikTok, you can be a little more casual. But when it comes to doing your broadcasts and your messages, your credibility is set by the look of your video. Is the lighting good? Is the audio good? Does it look interesting in the background? Does that support your brand? Which sometimes I'm breaking my own rule here because I have a speakeasy comic book store with a podcast studio in it. There's no sign out front. If you know me, you can come to this comic shop. But it's my style. Sure. I'm being true to me. This is what I wanted to do, and here we are. So I feel like that's the boutique side of things we think is very important because it means that it's the right thing for you. It's not a one-trick pony type company. Everything we do is unique. There's zero cookie cutter at Nelco Media.
What do you think was the catalyst in the live streaming world?
Well, the catalyst in the live streaming world, it's pretty interesting. Back in the 1950s all the way to the mid-'80s, television was in the hands of very few. You had to have millions of dollars to buy cameras and video switching and video recorders and engineers to operate it. And so in 1989, I think it was 89, NewTek released the video toaster and democratized television. And it was the first time that live video was in the hands of anyone with a couple $1,000s. But there was still a gatekeeper, and that was the television stations. You still had to get the word out. You had cable that was now a powerhouse. So cable TV was easier to get on than linear broadcast television. But the owner of NewTek in the 80s, he had a quote, Tim Jennison. The guy's one of the smartest people I've ever met, ever worked with. Tim, if you watch this, you're my hero. But he had a quote. He said, in the next 20 years, your favorite TV show will be made by you or someone you know.
He said that in
1985, I think. Dude,
Tim knew.
He knew, and that's what we were building towards, and that's why when I sold my production company, I wanted to work for him. He owned NewTek. I knew I needed to work for him. And so that leads us into actually answering your question, is once the internet was fast enough and compression got to a point where you could stream video, the world changed. The gatekeepers were gone. I could come up with an idea and make a show, and no one can tell me no. And I think it was the CEO of Amazon that wrote the book, The Long Tail. Oh no, it was the Wired. I think it was from Wired magazine, but it was about Amazon. The Long Tail. So there was a graph, and since we're on video, it was about bookstores. It's like, here's the number of books sold, and then the graph kind of looked like this and dropped way off. And that drop off was, these are the amount of spaces in a bookstore to put a book and show it in a bookstore. But then when Amazon hit, the graph looked like this, and then the tail went on forever. And they call that the long tail. And that long tail is not millions of books sold, it's tens of books sold, but 1 million books. And that's what streaming has really allowed, is this long tail content concept where I don't need 10 million viewers. I was the producer of the Miss Universe pageant in 2021, and we had millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people all over the world. 100 people, that's all that matters. I don't need millions. I need the right 100 people watching. And so that's what streaming has allowed, is that very targeted, localized in some ways, very, specific niche content that would never have seen the light of day before the streaming revolution.
There's a lot there. It was actually making me think about Tim. I would like to hear Tim's prediction in 2023 about, what the next 20 years is going to look like. What would you think?
It seems like it's going in a very bad direction. From a technology perspective, though, everybody's talking about AI. And, artificial intelligence is scary and amazing. We all are fans of the Terminator. We're getting there. It's we're obsoleting human jobs. ChatGPT is a prime example. I used to would pay somebody to write a bio for me. Now I go to ChatGPT and I'm like, write a bio in the style of blah 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 blah. Philip Nelson, former executive at NewTek, president of Nelco Media, and it writes a bio that is pretty freaking good.
Yeah, it's really
even like this writer's strike that's going on. I think they timed it really bad because, unless they get consensus that they're not going to get ChatGPT to write scripts, I've done some script tests. It was like, ChatGPT, write a script about this with this character who does this, blah blah blah, blah blah blah, blah blah blah, and I want it to be, 20 minutes long when shot on for television. and it writes out a script that's written in a format of a script. It's scary, and then you just go edit it. I didn't use it. It was just an experiment.
Sure.
But
how do you think that translates into live streaming and the video and
well,
branding?
Eventually, we always joked at New Tech that everybody just wants a make video button. It's like, make my video. And that is being developed.
Is it?
I mean, well, with AI powered editing, you could upload a script and say, edit my video eventually, and it's just going to edit your video.
That's amazing. Remarkable.
It's scary.
It really is.
Because, now, so the people that are going to succeed are the ones that adapt to these new tools, or you're going to be, like the buggy whip, the buggy whip maker, that the car comes out and nobody wants to buy a buggy whip anymore because they have a car, and you got to pivot. A book I really, back to Tim Jennison, I know I mention him a lot, but, when at New Tech, he would make us read a book called The Innovator's Dilemma. And it's basically a book, to summarize it, it's if you don't obsolete yourself, someone else will. In major paradigm shifts in industry, rarely the leader before the paradigm shift is the leader after the paradigm shift, because they're comfortable, they're making what they make, and somebody comes along and invents the automobile and nobody wants your buggy whip anymore. So, The Innovator's Dilemma is a great book, and it was really funny. My son just graduated with his master's in finance from A&M this weekend, and I was at his apartment and I noticed that book on the shelf. I was like, hey, you're reading The Innovator's Dilemma. And he goes, you gave it to me. I was like, oh, I forgot. But, he read it, and, it's important. It's important to stay ahead of the curve and not get comfortable, because you're not going to be the leader in the next change. Look at the taxi to Uber transition.
Sure.
And now you have Uber, not able to handle the volume that they obsoleted the taxi in a way, and now, nobody wants to drive because they're not making enough money. I mean, that's probably not entirely true, but I just know that when Uber first came out, I could always get an Uber. And now I can't get Ubers, and it's really caused me a lot of problems, when I'm trying to catch a flight to the airport at 4 o'clock in the morning.
That happened to me in
and
Scottsdale.
I didn't call a cab because I was like, I'll just get an Uber. And
And like I said, it happened in Scottsdale, same thing. I was going to miss the flight, so I wound up having to pay, 4 times the fare? I mean, the fare that should have been $30 was $150.
But it's interesting to see what will be next. I mean, it's anybody that can look around corners is going to be very wealthy. But it's pretty obvious that AI is not going anywhere.
Sure.
It's accelerating at an insane rate, and learn to love it or be obsolete. And but the scary thing is, I was reading an article about doctors and AI. We are all over the place today. We start off talking about business, now we're talking about AI. But I know but analyzing MRIs and CAT scans. I read an article that said that they were getting AI to analyze these images, and they were finding stuff that doctors were missing. And there was also, I don't know if it's an isolated case, but there was one anecdotal story about a doctor who did not listen to the AI, and the AI was right, and they missed something. So every industry is going to be impacted.
How do you think the live streaming world?
I think you're going to have make video buttons. It's like, hey, make my live stream. Okay, we're just going to follow you. Who are the key players? Philip is this, Rachel is this, and they'll switch the show for us eventually.
Amazing. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of the pro sports element, extreme sports, right? Take us down that path of when any of these kind of major leagues decided that they wanted to start getting into the live streaming world, and what was that reason? Well,
the first sports league that I worked with was the NBA. Steve Helmuth at the NBA, they had a minor league for the NBA called the G League. It actually was called the D League, but now they changed it to the G League because Gatorade sponsored it. But it was the D League, and they were in small markets, Tulsa, Oklahoma, near McAllen, Texas, in smaller markets, but it was pro basketball, but it was minor league basketball. And the NBA knew that these were all the players that were going to move up to the NBA eventually, or a lot of them would. And they wanted to have video, and they wanted people to be engaged with the minor league players. So we started streaming their games. And so Steve Helmuth and his team at the NBA, Aki and Tim Kaine and Steve Helmuth, were kind of the three key guys that I worked with. And we rolled it out nationwide. So that every G League game was streamed to NBA.com, and then I think they did a partnership with YouTube to get it on YouTube, and it's just grown, to an insane level. My biggest regret is I think at the time when we started working with the NBA, you could buy a D League team for around $400K. And I should have put together a group and bought a team, because now you can't get one for under like 8 to 10 million. But yeah, that was the first. And then, in the early days of live streaming, the MTV was the second big one, with the Hills and doing the Hills after show party. And then we did the first backstage live stream from the MTV Video Music Awards. And then we did press for MTV. It just started growing, and sports was an easy adoption because it's a game. They may not have enough interest to garner a television contract for a particular event, but people would watch it online. So we started working with the Arena Football League, and we streamed the Arena Bowl, and then started working with the X Games, and we started XCast, which was the first all-inclusive, all-day live streaming property for the X Games. And we had cameras all over at every park, the Big Air, the street course, the vert ramp, and rally, and we were streaming all day every day for the X Games and then Winter X Games, and the list goes on and on. Worked a lot with like the NFL, the New York Giants, doing sponsor activations. So one of the interesting things about streaming content in the early days of live streaming was that it was about what we call shoulder programming. The Super Bowl was never going to be produced on a TriCaster. They're always going to roll in the big iron and have the big TV trucks. But Sports Illustrated started streaming, doing live broadcasting from Radio Row. The New York Giants would get Carl Banks, who's a Giants legend, to come down and do broadcasts on the field, and it was streamed. Mm-hmm. And then even like during the draft, we worked with the New York Giants to do a custom NFL draft show that was, because if you're a New York Giants fan, you don't care who everybody else is drafting, you care who the next pick is for the Giants. And so it was on cable TV in New York City, and broadcast out of our gear, where Phil Simms is coming in talking about the next draft pick, and Armani Toomer and all these New York Giants legends are breaking down the NFL draft strictly from the fans' perspective of the New York Giants. So that was really the game changer, was what they call shoulder programming, because it allowed them to sell more sponsorships. It's monetizable content. Like at MTV, they had television sponsors that would advertise during the Hills, mm-hmm. and they were like, how can we sell more sponsorships for this same show in a different way? And let's do an after show party and have all the teenage girls in America instantly log on to MTV.com and watch, the after show. Mm-hmm. And they were able to monetize that again. And same with the VMAs. They've sold out advertising for the MTV Video Music Awards, but now you can sponsor the red carpet arrivals, and you can see everyone walk the red carpet and get out of their car. You can see backstage at the MTV Video Music Awards when Lady Gaga was walking in her meat dress. Do you remember the meat dress?
I do.
So we had a camera watching her walk out of her dressing room in the meat dress and try to make it up the stairs with a dress made of meat.
I think video needs a smell function.
I know. Smell-o-vision. It's coming soon in 2025.
The rancid meat. So, speaking of crazy careers, this is definitely one of them. The people that you've gotten to work with, the impact that you've made, not only from a technological innovation standpoint, but in the world itself of bringing so much content into living rooms. So let's talk about Joe Rogan for a little bit. So you built their studio.
Well, I didn't. Well, I don't want to overstate what we did. So Joe Rogan. So I'm going to backtrack. Okay. Tom Green was one of the first people to use a TriCaster for a celebrity television show. Okay. He did Live from Tom Green's House. he basically set a desk in his living room and would invite his friends over and go live on WebOvision. And one of those guests was Joe Rogan. And Joe was friends with Tom and was like, dude, I need to do this. So how did you do this? And he introduced him to us at New Tech, and we helped Joe with technology side of things. And then whenever I left New Tech, they were moving to Austin. So Jamie, which is Joe's producer, and Jamie's a machine. That guy, you know, he's producing the most important podcast on planet Earth. He calls me. He's like, hey, we're moving. I need you to go look at this building, and this is where we're going to be, and we need this, this, and this. And we helped him set it up and called in favors to get the equipment early so that they could launch. And what's interesting is they couldn't tell me why they were in such a rush to get this studio online and needed all the equipment so quickly, but then that's when they did the Snowden interview, you know.
Okay.
And they needed it to come in remotely, so we set up that system for them. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Rogan is you know, he's changed media, you know, long form, you know, he just talks as long as he needs to and to tell the story, and he's interesting and smart, and it's an honor to have worked with those guys.
Amazing. And then also not just them, but isn't it Steven Crowder as well?
We cannot say that yet.
Okay.
We are working on a deal with Louder with Crowder right now, but by the time this comes out, maybe it'll be inked. So,
well,
but Glenn Beck, we've worked with Glenn Beck and the Blaze TV network since the beginning. We worked with Glenn when he was in New York, and when he moved to Dallas, we continued working with him. So we've sold them their lighting, their switchers, all kinds of gear, and we've helped them for many, many years. And my good friend Rob Chickering runs all the engineering there, and you know, those guys do an amazing
really
job
do.
at the
They
Blaze.
really do. Thank you. They do. Not just
Go Glenn.
Shout out. Wonderful. So that kind of encapsulates everything I wanted to cover, unless you know, there's something that...
No, it's just fun. You know, I apologize that I like to ramble on and hear myself talk, but you know, it's fun to tell stories, and you know, it's fun to have stories to tell, and you know, but the most important thing is if you would like to build your own live broadcasting studio, please call Nelco Media. Our website is Nelco, Nelco, and my name's Philip Nelson, so I would be happy to help you.
Wonderful. Well, there you have it, folks. Another powerhouse interview with the founder of live streaming, the pioneer of live streaming, Philip Nelson. Tune in for another episode. We'll catch you guys soon.